Okay, so everyone, welcome back to the channel for this Kwentuhan. Ang kasama natin ay si Sir Carljoe Javier, an educator, an
Yeah.
editor, and a writer. Medyo kakaiba kasi most of our guests are artist writers. Ang only pure writer na guest ko would be si Ma'am Bambi. So ngayon may pure writer tayo ulit na guest. Sir, would you like to introduce yourself?
Kumusta, John? So, one, congrats on the channel. I think it's really important that you're doing this. So, mga napanood ko na episodes, sabi mo nga, kailangan educate yung mga tao about how comics works.
Well, right now, yeah. Yung how most of the current creators are doing their work. Only for the would-be creators and for yung yun nga, for people who are wondering paano yung comics ngayon.
Kasi dati we used to hang out in Comic-Con and nakapag-usap ng mga tao and nakabuild ng community. So I think it's great. Thanks for having me. Hi everyone, I'm Carl. I am one of maybe, at the time when I was an active editor, I think tatlo lang kaming tumatayong editor sa mga bagay-bagay. Like I know si Paolo Chicampo at a certain point. Pure writer, editor, and then si Paulo Eras who continues to do his thing. He's also a writer and an editor. Pero I think yung editor position in a major publisher, I'm not sure. I think si Bernie is stepping into that kind of role, si Bernie Mercado. But parang I guess I pioneered the role in Anino Comics. So I've written some things. I think yung most the things that people might be familiar with are the first adaptation of the Jano Silang books. Thank you, with Tasha Ringor, and then I did Shake, Rattle, and Roll with Merv and Adam and Noel, and so yun yung para more recent, more known titles, and then parang small weird things na lang, I think, in general, and then the Anino works, which people will probably be more familiar with, starting with Rob's Light and Lost, Ian and Russ's 66, and then I think the last set of books that I got to handle were In Dead Balagtas, and then yung from the Mikeys, kay Mikey Jimenez siya kay Mikey Marchan. Oh man, I love that book. And I'm blanking on the title. But yes, I'm sure that it's there.
What was yung title? Sandali? Was that it?
Sandali, yeah. Yeah. Sorry guys.
Ayun nga.
Sorry guys.
Actually, I was looking at yung mga books and I don't really see yung parang most people wouldn't know na you were involved in those books. Pero yun nga, sa personal knowledge ko lang na most of the books that nilabas ni Anino during that time, you have your hands on it.
Yeah, I think that's one of the regrets I have, and one of the things na nilaban actually ni Apple nung nilabas namin yung libro niya, na bakit wala yung pangalan mo dyan?
Yeah, yun nga. I was wondering kasi kanina I was looking at yung mga books na I know you had a hand in it. Pero wala nga yung pangalan mo. Why?
Wala, nasa ano lang ako. Nasa acknowledgements and thank you lang ako. So I guess that's why things like this are important, para may acknowledgement.
Oo nga.
I don't know. Medyo hindi ko siya masyadong inisip na nangyayari. But I think sakit din ng creator ay may project, sige, tapos hindi natin titignan yung fine print, hindi natin And nothing against Anino naman. Like they were a very supportive system. I enjoyed working with Ani and Asa na parang rin yun kasi when you're working within a system, kailangan kaya mo mag-navigate yung weirdness mo. And then pero paano bebenta yan? How are we gonna move, X thousand copies of this book and then ilalaban mo siya or you figure out mo. So there's actually some creators that I tried to work with na hindi talaga pumasok kasi hindi namin ma-figure out kung ano yung pop appeal, or
Oo.
we'd take something na super indie yung dating and we'd be like, okay to, but can you do something na weirdly pop? So, like an example of this would be si Trisha Ko, na,
Yeah,
di ba,
yung
she had
book
this,
niya.
yeah, yung Dali and Lavinia, but I discovered her through her very personal, parang slice of life comics, and I really love those. And then it became like, sana we can find some way to work. And then she had that pitch for Dali and Lavinia, and so that's what worked. So I feel like among the artistic concerns talaga, yung navigating the artistic and the commercial ay parang kailangan talaga natin laging gawin.
Yeah, medyo magandang topic kasi yun nga, since you're working with a publisher, yung sales is medyo factor, and you've worked with a lot of indie creators na na-mention mo na rin na kailangan i-temper yung pagiging artistic and also being commercially viable.
Ah.
So how did you go about yung ganyan?
Well, one, you have to try and understand it from everyone's side. So, for example, sorry, we might be jumping ahead. Parang parang wala tayong warm up, wala tayong background. But like, for example, if you go and you look at what the page rate in America is, right? It's like $1,000 or something per page. And then,
well, not really. I mean, for yung first established siguro, pero people might think na pag you work for America, gano'n na kagad. Pero
exactly, but that's my point. It's like, sa Marvel, ganito. Like, I've talked to people na ganyan. Sa Marvel, balita ko, ito yung page rate. Tapos ito lang yung offer namin. Parang, and so, yes, right? Like, you can't deny that's the page rate in Marvel. But
bigyan natin sila ng comparisons, okay? So people might think na you earn thousands of dollars or $1,000 per page working for an American publisher, but that's not really true, since I've also been handling production for American publishers. You get as low as $15 to $100. Tapos if you get like 200 to 300, 500 to 1,000, you're kind of established na. So yun yung ranges. So hindi talaga yung hindi talaga siya ganun kalaki rin if you think about it.
It's about the publisher, diba? It's the size of the publisher and the distribution capacities of a publisher, right? Kasi it's sa laki niya, ang dami niyang masiship na issues, and so kaya niya magbayad na mas malaki because of the number of copies sold. But that also means you don't own any of that. It also means na you're at their behest. And so it's all this creative control versus capital na parang, pag sinabi nila $1,000 yan, may karapatan ka bang pumalag? Diba? May karapatan ka pumalag kung you're the quality of artist who demands that rate.
Yeah.
And so it has to be a parang leveling off of expectations. Teka. Sorry, nag-freeze yata ako.
No, hindi na.
So, okay naman. Okay, so in terms of leveling of expectations, for example, kung you're gonna work with like a student, hindi fair, di ba? Hindi mo kung ano yung kaya niya ilabas. And then, that's why I always tell people, it's so important na mag-boost kayo sa Comic-Con. Because yun yung real, that's the real, at the time, it was just Comic-Con, di ba? And then yung kanya-kanyang, then may BLTX, di ba? Parang ganyan. But it's so important that you understand the commercial and capital concerns of any kind of production. Kasi, Comic-Con, alala ko kasi man, yung umangal talaga yung mga tao sa 6,000 pesos na booth. Na parang, I mean, it's not cheap.
Yeah, it's
but
not.
Then, the work of organizing Comic-Con is not cheap. Di ba? So parang, yung trabaho na ginagawa nyo, di ba, ng Comic-Con organizers, sino magbabayad nun? Saan manggagaling yun, di ba?
Well, yun nga and then, maybe to clear up things, the people think na yung money going to the exhibitor's table goes to us. Not really. It's just going to the venue.
Exactly. Because magkano ang venue? Diba? Ganun ka basic ang mga bagay na parang we don't think about. Like, ganito. How much is rent in National Bookstore? Right? A National Bookstore has to pay rent.
Yeah.
300, 400,000 for a small cut in a mall.
In the mall.
Baka tumaas na. Pero yung time na I was working in publishing, ganun pa. 300, 400,000 in the mall. Kaya makabenta sila, kaya hindi. Magbayad sila ng 300, 400,000. Kaya nagtataka ba tayo na ang binibenta na nila na books yung mabilis lumabas and di ba? Parang, and then they won't make space for your little indie comic na selling for, di ba? Yan yung one consideration. And then you turn around and you say, pag nagpunta kayong Comic-Con, how much are you willing to spend? Diba? Pag siya, okay, Comic-Con, hindi man tayo lahat si Danry, di ba? Parang, si Danry will buy everything. But tayo, we show up, where, meron akong 2,000 today, meron akong 3,000 today. Yung mga iba, hindi nga that much, di ba? Excuse me. I mean, ako, as a professional, like, kailangan ko bumili. Hindi ako, like, to discover new things. I won't buy everything. Pumipili pa rin ako doon.
Yeah, oo.
And then dun sa level na pumipili, ano yung budget natin? Pag sinabi ba ng creator, 200 ay mahal, 300 ay mahal. Diba? That's the leveling. Like when we were, you can see sa Anino books, wala nagbe-break ng 300 peso price range. Because the moment people broke 300, mahal. Unless it was Dead Balagtas, which was a experimental format, alam namin na gagalaw siya. Kasi pre-orders pa lang, alam mo nang gagalaw. So, there's capital, there's the cost of doing business, there's the cost of the venue, and then there's consumer willingness. And then when you try and boil all of that together, and then yung sarili mong, di ba, yung sarili mong ginawa na, how many hours did I put into this? And then the truth of it, the only great art, di ba, parang how much of my heart did I put into this thing? And how much can I ask people to pay for yung heart that is in here? Diba? Yun yung mga kailangan i-navigate na cost sa pagiging successful, diba? I mean, everyone think, I think one of the most amazing things to happen for Filipino creators is the 13 adaptation.
Yeah.
But one of the worst things for people to do is to say, gagawa ko ng pang 13, gusto ko maka-Netflix. Diba? Yeah. Kasi hindi ganun eh. Hindi ganun
eh. Kailangan, iniisip nila kaagad yung jump. Kasi yung work behind before nung jump is important actually.
Diba, gano'ng katagal si Budge gumagawa ng comics before?
Diba? Yeah, since the 90s.
Since the 90s, the man put in the work. And then silang dalawa ni Carljoe, how many books did they release before? Everyone put in the work. So it's okay na mangarap. But yung pangarap mo, may work, may hustle, may diba? Umupo naman si Budget at saka si Carljoe sa Comic-Con at nagbebenta sila ng singles.
Yeah.
At nanunukli sila. And that's just part of the process.
One thing pa na hindi iniisip ng mga tao would be, they're thinking about the jump. I mean, gusto nila maging 13. Yeah. Pero if your work gets adopted, pero yung library naman mong nagawa is like just an issue. So think about ano pa i-adapt nila. Tapos if they do something with your property na since isa nga lang yung pwede nilang i-adapt, would it still be yours?
It's diba, pwede naman na parang I feel like magkaiba yung I think I talked if anybody wants like a longer discussion on it. Kinausap ko naman si Josel and Apple about it. And I said like and Adam and I say if your heart is in content creation, IP, ganyan. Gagawa akong IP and then the comic is one filter through which my IP will develop. Kailangan malinaw yon. Versus gagawa akong comics because I love comics. But you can see the difference eh. Yung mga komikero na they love the craft. It's the paneling. It's the, di ba, parang it's the way that you pace a page. It's the comicsness of something. Tapos kita mo yung mga, eto, ano lang to eh, may pangarap to maging movie script tapos gusto nilang maging ganyan. Parang Kaya kailangan talaga may adaptation level, may thinking level on the level of art and what that art is capable of doing. Ang weird lang ng jump ko from like super commercial to super artness, but di ba,
Yeah.
parang understanding what an art form is capable of doing and embracing that art form versus saying na comics is just a vehicle para makapag-pitch ako ng film ko. Pwede naman, pero bakit hindi ka na gumawa ng storyboard? Hindi ka na gumawa ng pitch, di ba?
Yeah. Kasi may sort of street clout din if it's a graphic novel first.
Yes. Yes. Or like for us right now sa Puma Podcast, we're really eyeing moving more aggressively into fiction work and doing audio drama and audio storytelling. And then maybe that will become a Netflix thing. Pero parang, no, sige, di ba, mangarap tayo, pero kailangan malupit siyang audio drama. Parang sa anino, parang, okay, kailangan, gawa tayo, pero kailangan malupit siyang comics.
For those who are not familiar, as in sobrang eclectic, as in sobrang varied talaga yung mga nilabas na books during your time with Anino. Pero yun nga, we jumped forward so much.
Sorry.
Pero as in, ito naman talaga yung, actually, most of the other creators kasi I just want to introduce. I want to introduce you then. Kasi like I said, di ka credited most dun sa work mo. And parang important, madalas na pag-uusapan recently sa mga panels is yung third part ng paggawa ng comics is, di ba, ang pag-usapan lagi is yung writing, pag-uusapan lagi yung art, pero yun nga, kasi yung third part which is yung editorial is also very important.
Yeah.
Oo. Wala masyadong gumagawa. Like you said, parang tatlo lang kayo.
Yeah. Bernie, apat.
Well, yeah.
Bernie.
Stepping forward pa lang si Bernie. Pero, well, let's say the managing editor din ng Black Ink would have done that.
Yes, yeah. Oo nga
Si
naman.
Ma'am Melay. So, yeah. Pero yun nga,
sobrang... Sa Summit meron din.
Sobrang hirap din ng part na yun na mag-polish ng work. So,
ego kasi yun eh.
medyo yun nga, makikipag-clash ka with yung artist pride, ego, and everything. mga ganong bagay. Pero you're also a writer kasi. So,
yeah. I'm an editor because no one else wants the job. And then I have a proficiency for it. Because I can't draw. If I could draw, I would draw. And if I get the chance to write, I write. But feeling ko kasi dami mas magaling sa akin magsulat. Parang ganon. So I found it takes a long time to build up the ego to accept your limitations because everyone wants to be the superstar artist or the superstar writer.
Right? Man.
Oo parang hindi mo maiwasan. Like, naman, nangangarap pa rin naman ako na one day magkakaroon ako ng, like Warren Ellis or Tom King level na work that people will attach themselves to. But I'm not there yet. But I've been able to help creators make that. Diba? So, if you're not the front man, you can be the bassist. You can play the keyboard. You can do the lights. Whatever it takes to be a part of someone else's creative vision. If you think that's what works, and but you're correct in identifying na it's my training in writing that helps with that. Na not just parang having a creative writing degree, but also teaching creative writing na as a matter of the teaching. Parang wala akong ginawa kung hindi magbasa ng work ng ibang tao tas durugin lang yung work nila.
I guess yun yung naging training mo nung for
Yeah. So, yan. Ayusin ko yan. And then kind of being the kind of person that people ask, "Oy, ayusin naman natin tong work ko," or "Can I tell you my story idea?" Butasin mo siya. And it means that they need to trust you. They need to trust that you actually have, kasi you can't be like a mean, shitty person that just likes to tell people na pangit yung gawa nila. Di ba?
Yeah, kasi hindi rin nila natanggapin.
You have to be, and I don't know, like some people might not like me and some people might not like the work that I've done or whatever. Pero when you find people who believe in you, na parang nag-jamming kayo enough na one, they actually like the way that you tell stories. And then two, they respect and trust you na it's the hard, alam mo naman to, it's the hardest thing to show someone your unfinished work.
Yeah.
Diba? And to say, oy, tingnan mo naman, like, help me, like, you the ego to overcome and say, alam ko na may sabit to, but I think maybe you can help me. And then to be on the receiving end of that and to take it and say, yeah, sige, I understand you. I understand what you're trying to do. I understand storytelling. And so I'm going to take your work and then I'm going to make my recommendations and then we'll see. Yeah, so medyo yun plus like the navigation and then understanding na each creator is different. May mga creator na bibigay mo lang, ito overall comments ko, go na yan. And then may mga creator na papadalan ka ng 2 file, tapos magkaiba lang ng shade ng color, yung kulay dito yung mas strip mo. And then pipili ka lang, ayan. Kasi kailangan na yung reinforcement, kailangan yung, bakit yung pinili mo? And then you have a conversation, pwedeng ganon. Or sometimes the difficult thing of, man, this just isn't working. We need to strip this whole thing down. So understanding those creators and understanding their comfort levels and parang it's almost like being a therapist.
Ang isa pang napag-uusapan usually is kasi yun nga, yung culture din ng paggawa dito, ever since nawala yung mga publishers, most of the creators are left to their own devices. So they don't really know or they don't really understand na important yung lahat ng phase ng process in creating a comics. So, yun nga, maganda na napapaalam ng, ngayon, katulad ng mga conversations na to na it's not just writing a comic book. It's not just illustrating a comic book. Sometimes you need other eyes on it para mas gumanda pa. Paulit-ulit na yan dito yun. Kasi if you are working on a project, usually you have blinders on. Especially kung matagal mo na siyang ginagawa.
Oo, kailangan talaga. You need fresh eyes. You need an objective look. And you need to have someone who loves you enough to tell you pag pangit yung gawa. Pangit tol.
Huwag mo ilabas.
Huwag mo na ilabas yan. Bigyan muna natin.
Kasi yun nga, di ba? Talking again about the culture ngayon. The culture is may event. Yan, may event. Tapos let's do something. Usually yung something niya, yung timeline niya is like a month lang or at most couple of weeks. Tapos anything na produce natin sa couple of weeks na yun, wala nang polishing, ilalabas na natin dun sa event.
Ganon niya, di ba? Yung just building a production calendar, like understanding, for example, kasi yun nga, when I was editing at Anino, nakatali talaga sa Comic-Con, April, November, which meant February, tapos na dapat. Never happened.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. pero dapat meron kang buffer of February.
Yeah.
Nasa imprenta na para March. That's why, diba, I won't name the comics. Pero I'm sure na lahat tayo nakahawak tayo ng comics na pagdating sa Comic-Con, pag ganun mo,
yeah.
Diba? Kasi wala silang oras para ituyo yung glue.
Ayun din, for casual viewers, hindi lang basta binubuo yun, kailangan din mag-cure nun.
Diba?
Kaya pag minsan, di ba, magre-reklamo sila na malagkit yung cover. Kasi hindi pa tuyo yung lamination. Nagka-curl yung covers because hindi rin na-cure yung lamination, kaya nagka-curl yun. Kaya most of
Exactly.
yung mga comics na you get sa mga events, usually sobrang fresh noon. As in, fresh off the printers.
Mhm. Mhm. Nung buhay pa ang ano, 'di ba? Ang shopping center. Punta ka ng shopping center anytime the week before Comic-Con, makakita ka ng comics creator na nagpapatakbo ng
Yeah,
rice or ng
yung night
Xerox.
before nga eh. As in, ang daming tao doon. Pero,
Ah,
yun nga, as in, going back to the culture, yun kasi yung culture talaga eh. As in, nawala yung kailangan it's a month before tapos na to. As in,
mhm.
not tapos na katatapos nyo lang nung art and yung pagsusulat. As in, tapos na. As in, naka-print na siya dapat a month before.
Ako, I'll ask you this, John, since you manage these things professionally. How do you keep an artist on schedule? Kasi, kunwari, um, I mean, not obviously mental health and self-care are important, but deadlines are also important and commitments are important. And so, parang, pag nag-farm out ka ng work, di ba may basic expectation ka na darating yung work on time, right?
Okay. So, professionally, kasi ano yan, yun nga, you said it, professionally. So, it means they're getting paid. Which is yung wala yung factor na wala with most of the creators. So, yun yung pinaka-basic na parang incentive nila to be on time is to get paid.
Okay, so malinaw na parang because working with you in that way is a professional pursuit. Pero because passion project ito, di ba
Yeah.
weird? Parang yung passion project mo yung pwede mo i-delay.
It's the same thing kasi nga, di ba, if you're working with friends, most of the time, yung instead of giving yung best mo, kasi friend mo nga siya, usually yung bare minimum yun, okay na yan kasi friends naman tayo eh. Di ba? Parang, salit na bigyan mo ng mas importansya yun kasi friend mo nga sila. Usually yung bare talaga na ano. Kaya nga mas maganda ma-professionalize yung culture na paggawa eh.
Ang hirap eh. Kasi nga I want to acknowledge artistry and inspiration and all that stuff. Pero iba rin kasi yung getting the work in.
Also, tsaka ano pala, it's different din kasi if you are working on your own project for a publisher, it's quite different for being work for hire for a publisher to work on their project.
Yes.
So it's different din. So medyo, though pwede namang sabihin na magkapareho, sobrang magkaiba pa rin. I mean, for example, we are a production company. We provide art production services. So, yun nga, since they just hired us to do art chores, beholden kami na sundin yung deadline. And pag hindi kayo nakakapag-produce, either hindi kayo mababayaran or for yung work na ginawa nyo na, late eh. So, anong gagawin mo?
Actually nga, yung ganyan yung, tol, tirahin natin yung comics para sa April Con. Tapos, yun nga, now there's more cons, right? And there's more regional and everything else. But before, pag na-miss mo yung April, November ka na.
May November. Usually, magagaya na, di ba? Makikita mo na, coming October, ganyan. Tapos, pag minsan, medyo mean kasi ako, makikita ko, sa May ko na yan makikita. Yung looking lang at yung credentials or, uy, si ano yung gagawa, ganyan. Uy, si anong gagawa. April ko na yan makikita.
Hindi abot yan.
Lalo na pag in-announce sila parang a month before or 2 months before.
Wala yan, wala. So, I mean, at this point, it's like comics creators prove us wrong. Yeah. Change our minds, diba? Change our minds.
Though, alam mo yun, if you are working with them on a project, not their own personal project, as a work for hire thing, makikita mo yung speed eh. As in, makikita mo na they can be professional. They can be... Pero like I said, if it's a personal thing, like, mas pag minsan mas napupush aside, either for perfection or either because pag minsan yung ego din ng creator, since we used to work on work for hire projects na kaya natin i-churn natin in weeks lang. Parang gano'n ako kabilis. Pero nakakalimutan nila minsan na but that's a studio setting. As in, ito tayong gumawa niyan. Itong gagawin mo to, it's your personal project. Ikaw lang yung gagawa ng lahat.
I also think actually tama ka na parang it's the ego of the and the perfection of a personal work. Kasi if it's work for hire, wala, hindi not necessarily ilalagay mo yung puso mo doon eh. Diba? Pwedeng mechanical production yan. Nagawa ka.
Not saying na hindi nilalagay nung iba. I know a lot of other na mga work for hire artists na talagang they'd like to put a stamp na ito yung work ko. Tapos, kasi they're building a brand.
But just saying na very different when it's your own. Na parang it's 100. Because if it's work for hire, you're going to put yourself into it. Pero yung when it's a personal work na it's 100% you or you and a co-creator na talagang yun yung parang oh shit, have I done everything?
And then, pag minsan din naman nag-overthink, nag-overplan, over everything.
And God's honest truth is you're never gonna be done. And therefore never mo na siya mailalabas, di ba?
Diba? If you ask anyone has done a comic book kung ano yung maganda nila masabi. Lagi nila sasabihin is, gawin mo lang. Gawin mo na lang. Instead of over-planning things, gawin mo na.
Exactly. And it's like, so one thing, and this is like something I've always said at Comic-Con and that talks and everywhere else, and it bears repeating for the new audiences. Huwag kayo mangarap ng 700-page fantasy epic, right? Like if it is your first work, maghanap kayo ng writer, artist, tapos mag-produce ka ng 8 pages. Pwede 8 pages in the world of that fantasy epic, but stop pitching fantasy epics. Parang kailangan mong mag-produce ng pahina. Kailangan mong produce everyday ng pahina. Kailangan mong magsulat everyday ng script of the thing that you're going to do. And that's why, I'll come across as an editor or as someone acquiring titles, dami-dami ko makukuha ng pitch. Ang ganda na itong idea na to. Ang ganda ng treatment, 1-pager, ganon. Sige, bigyan mo ako 8 pages and then never nang babalik. Right? Kasi the need to repeat things, diba? The repetition of comics creation, of drawing the same character over and over for 8 pages versus 700 pages or 800 pages or whatever, diba? Parang you really have to love drawing that character over and over.
Yeah. Tsaka diba? Parang you think na it's easy na gumawa nung epic na 700 pages. I mean, writing a novel na ganun takes authors years. Imagine if comics yung gagawin mo.
Exactly. Papadrawing mo, diba? Tapos what if pangit at some point? Like, it's the muscle, right? It's the muscle it's the muscle of, it's building muscle in producing pages for yourself. And then if you have a collaborator, diba? The back and forth. Yung away nyo na. Ayoko to parang dyan sa Shake, Rattle, and Roll may mga kami ito yung imagery gusto ko yung drawing ganyan pero nga it doesn't serve the story mas maganda hindi pero trip ko yung ganong image and then parang tawagin natin yung editor to try and mediate and the editor will say
diba? Which is why an editor is important. Lalo na if you are collaborating with another creator para may mediator.
Tapos pag nag-settle yung editor, wala nang tampuhan. Kung ang sinabi ng editor, susunod kayo, respetuhin niyo yun. Parang hindi, kailangan ganyan yan. Execute the page.
Dito sa Pilipinas, hindi, ito si paborito niya yung si Ani.
Lagi na lang niyo kinakampihan yung ideas ni blah, blah, blah. Diba? I know, it's the work. Diba? We have to get out of our own way so that we can produce the work. Parang may binabasa ko ngayon, How to Write a Song by Jeff Tweedy of Wilco. Tapos ang sinasabi niya na the most ideal space of creation is when ang dami mo na naipon and you're trying to pick and then you disappear. Parang walang ego. So it's only the everything that you've thought of and it's the song. pero wala yung feelings mo of doubt na maganda ba to, ganyan, like, you're just creating. You have to get out of your own way. So parang ganun dapat na when you're creators, wala din yung ego. You get out of your own way so that you can serve the work. Parang ganun. It's weird, pero nga, parang you have to separate yourself from the work that you're creating. Hindi ko alam kung helpful yun.
Medyo ano yun,
Medyo
mahirap i-unpack.
It's really like being egoless. That's really just for me. That's
Well, kaso yun nga as a creator then you have to build din yung confidence. So you have to build din yung ego para mag-start ka rin mag-create.
Yeah, kailangan mayabang ka enough.
Kasi makapal dapat yung
ano pa? Oh, yeah.
Gawang
comic.
Diba, you are teaching yung para ma-experience nyo yung tunay na pag-comics create, kailangan yung mag-table sa booth. Kasi right there, makakakuha ka ng input dun sa ginawa mo from other people na hindi mo kilala.
Sakit. Yung lalakad sila, tapos, huh? Ganun. Huh? Tapos diretso lang sila.
Tapos yun din. As in, ayun ba, yung another aspect of comics creation na hindi masyado, well, ngayon dahil sa marami na nagtuturo na pagtinda, as in, selling no actual na work is another matter na kailangan pag-usapan din. Kasi actually yung sinabi mo na may dumaan tapos tinignan yung work mo, that's half the sale. You just have to pull mo lang siya.
If, di ba? Minsan hiya lang yan. Ay, bili mo naman yung comics ko. Mahiya sila kasi ginausap mo.
Ay, hindi. Hindi lagi ko tinuturo actually ngayon. Pag ginawa ka yung comics mo, half the sale yun, kailangan nila close. Kasi, yun interest yun eh. So, yun, kailangan din pag-aralan ng mga creators yun, which is dapat hindi naman talaga kung meron tayong, like you said, publisher and everything. Pero as of now, wala eh. Do it yourself talaga eh.
Yeah, it's really, that's the culture, but that's the freedom.
Yeah.
Diba? Kasi if you have a publisher, if you're working in a structure, meron ka ng concessions.
Yeah,
kailangan
kasi,
may inaabol kang, di ba? May inaabol kang
sales. Yung commercial viability. Pag-usapan natin kanina. Kailangan mabenta mo yung libro. So, yun nga, bibigyan ka ng pointers on kailangan mo tanggalin yung mga nakahubad na yan.
Oh man, the stories I have about yung sa Darna, nilalaban namin yung nilalaban na kasi so when Gemma Bernaldez and I, when we were trying to redesign Darna, we were told parang meron kayong freedom to reimagine ganyan. So in my mind, and because at the time I was heavily into training mixed martial arts, and so to me, parang it doesn't make sense. Like what she's wearing doesn't make sense. But there are an entire line of martial arts clothing engineered for women's fighting performance. And so why not give her that na parang, di ba? Like so, we had if you see, I'm willing to forward you some of the documents and you can share them. And it was in the Sigaw Darna stuff. But if you see what we made her wear, it's like mixed martial arts wear. And then sinabi sa amin, hindi kailangan yung bra. Kailangan, sabi ko, kailangan ba may star? Kailangan talaga may star. Yung nipples, may star kailangan.
It's the same thing with working on advertising, di ba?
Yeah.
Your client would say na, you have the freedom to think of ganyan-ganyan, tapos they'd give you a Bible, pero follow these rules.
Yan yung limits mo. Kasi, but it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. Tapos, can I rewrite this part or can I rewrite this part? Hindi, kailangan talaga malulunok niya yung bato eh. So, and then, but there's also freedom in that. You go and you think, and
pero it's different din kasi if you are working on a legacy characters which has years of history behind it. So it's different if you're doing that than
versus
doing
your
your
own
thing.
Yeah. And then my story for Comic Con is the first ever time na nagbenta ako sa Comic Con. That was my own work. Was sa
Which
Star
was yung,
Mall.
ano yung work na tinitinda
It
mo?
was Kobayashi Maru's. It was not a comic book.
Yeah, okay.
It's a comic. It was my second book of essays about like heartbreak and recovery, ganyan. So madrama siya. And all of the cover art, we did 3 different cover art. Isa parang 8-bit 8-bit Mario theme, and then another one was Scott Pilgrim themed artwork. So when you walk by it, mukha siyang pwedeng pang comics yung itsura niya. And I was sharing a booth. Ang gumawa ng artwork si Adam, as usual. Like si Adam, Josel, these guys are people I've been collaborating with for as long as I've been in the comics world. So sila yung kashare ko ng booth. So pag turn ko para magbantay, and so kumain sila, whatever, mag-isa ko. And then may mga dumadaan na tao. And then they pick up the books. Ay, ang ganda ng cover. Sabi niya, ba't walang comics sa loob? Kasi nga, it's a book of kasi essay book yan, pero themed in like, kasi parang it fits in this comics world. Okay, so babalik na lang. Kasi because I mistakenly thought na Comic-Con would be the best place to sell a book of essays. You know? But you know, it moved copies. It made sense, and then you know, people who were into Scott Pilgrim and sasabihin mo na, ayan kasi inspired din naman, parang ganun yung style ng essays dyan. The stories here are kind of like what you read in the comics you like. Gumalaw naman siya. Pero yun talaga yung parang, ay, hindi siya comics.
As in, parang yung same thing with sa MIDF naman.
Yeah.
Yung first time na nagpunta yung under yung initiative ni Natepay, they got a booth sa MIDF and people are surprised. Ay, may comics pa.
Yeah. But it's important. It's important to be there to try and parang mix up the culture.
Kasi, yun nga, like I said, yun yung mga hindi natin iniisip. Pero, like Sir Carver said, somebody should, yun nga, try to push comics. Hindi lang within our ranks kasi pag tayo lang din yung magbabasa. No?
Oh.
Somebody should write about comics tapos na outside ng circle ng comics. And yun yung part na parang if you go to other events na hindi naman pang comics, kasi parang laging yun yung surprise for creators na hindi alam yung community. Tapos they find out, oy, may ganito pala. Ang usual nila sinasabi, ano ba yan? Parang secret, underground. Hindi kami underground, wala lang may alam sa amin.
I was on this stress panel last week. Tapos sabi ko nga na, lagi may nagsasabi, OPM is dead, comics is dead, ganyan, di ba? Film is dead, whatever. Tapos, yung nagsasabi nun, wala lang sila sa culture. Like, they're just not accessing the culture. Kasi sabi ko, sampalin kita ng like the tens of thousands of people who go to Comic-Con every year. Di ba? Parang, nakaka 5 figures ang attendance ng Comic-Con. And that's only one of the many cons. And with the many regional cons and the online communities, ang dami-dami. So it has to be the work of people who are making those pronouncements to actually find it. In our job, the icky stuff of commerce is for a creator, sobrang icky ng marketing.
Yeah.
Because we think, binibenta mo yung sarili mo, I sell out o ganyan. But this might be me trying to rationalize, but the ideal state or the ideal function of marketing is that there are people who want the product, but they don't know it's there. And it's through marketing that they realize that it is available. Oy, andyan na pala yan. So in the best things, right? Like, ay, available na yan. Sige, bibilang ko yan because that's exactly what I need. I really love comics. So there is a gap. We have to accept that there still continues to be a gap for a lot of people. Na I speak as someone na I know that the comics community has grown and done so much work compared to say the literary community. Kasi hanggang ngayon, minsan nasasabihan pa ako na meron pa pala mga buhay ng author, no? Parang ay, bata mo naman, akala ko lahat ng authors sa Pilipino matatanda. Ganon. Diba, there's a lot of gaps to bridge. Because for Filipino mainstream culture, our mainstream culture is really TV, film, radio, ganyan. It's not so much in things that are rooted in literature, and I still consider comics to be rooted in literature na yung pagbabasa, yung ganyan, hindi kasi top activity, hindi yan leisure eh. Di ba?
Totoo.
Hindi siya considered leisure eh. Weirdo, like, di ba? And then within the literature world, and you saw this happen to me naman, within the literature world, inuupakan pa yung comics na hindi siya literature. So, parang,
Well,
gano'n na.
within comics nga, nag-uupakan pa rin sila na hindi yan comics.
Yeah.
Hindi.
Yeah. Yeah, di ba? But like, I love it na Anino helped to kind of mess up, say, the National Book Awards. Kasi gustong-gusto ko na may one time na hindi nila magbigyan ng prize kasi hindi nila alam kung ano yung category. So the first year of Anino, parang they decided to split categories para may best comic in English, may best comic in Filipino. May silent comics
May
silent comics si Manix, 'di ba? From Visprint naman. Paano na hindi siya English or Filipino sa natin siya ilalagay?
Nagawa pa sila.
And then ngayon parang merge na lang natin para hindi tayo mahirapan, I think. So best comics na lang sila ulit. So, it's funny lang.
Maganda yun na may separate sila.
Yeah.
One thing pa pala,
acknowledging. Yeah.
speaking about marketing and creators marketing themselves. Yung ibang creators kasi take offense na parang bakit laging si creator na ganito yung napapansin. Pero look at din yung effort. Look at din yung time na ininvest nila to promote themselves. And if nobody notices you, nobody, take the initiative na kayo na mismo yung mag-promote ng sarili mo. As in, yun lang yung medyo,
Pasok natin dito, John, yung usapan ng yung wearing your own merch.
Yeah.
Di ba? Sino ba masusunod na merch mo?
Exactly. As in, So, yun nga, pag walang mapansin sa'yo, edi make moves na may makapansin sa'yo. Don't whine on the internet na, puro si ganyan na lang yung napapansin. Ganyan. Parang, akala ko ba dapat lahat na promote? Pinopromote mo ba yung sarili mo?
Promote mo sarili mo.
Saka yun
It's the hardest thing, di ba? It's the hardest thing if you're not willing to promote yourself, tapos magtatampo ka na hindi ka na po-promote.
True. Tapos yun nga, then you would blame like an event or a platform na yun yung pinapansin. Pero think then na kaya sila pinapansin ni event at ni platform kasi it would be more beneficial din para sa mga hindi nagpo-promote ng sarili nila since these are the people that other people know.
Yeah. I know it's yucky. It's a yucky feeling. And sometimes you think my art should speak for itself. But no, di ba? But you need to get it out there. And given lahat ng kalaban natin for attention, ang lakas naman ng loob mo to say na you don't need to be marketed. Like, if you really just want to stick to it, okay din lang naman. Pero,
diba? You're not doing your marketing, pero you're expecting others to do it for you?
Yeah. Parang, how will you be discovered? Right? And discovery is such a challenging thing in a world of noise.
Yeah.
At naisip ko rin lang, kung ginajudge natin lahat yan, guys, tandaan natin like si Jay-Z. Siyempre lagi si Jay-Z yung reference. Si Jay-Z, nagtayo siya ng clothing line. Suot niya yung clothes niya, di ba? You think na hindi sinusuot ni Kanye yung Jesus? Sinusuot niya yung Jesus. So parang, these people, they wear their own merch, but sila hindi niya judge, pero i-judge yung comics creator naglabas ng stuff. We need to do it. Because who else will?
Ayun nga eh. Lagi kasi sabi, parang if nobody else would notice you, nobody else would do your own promotion, ikaw na yung mag-initiate ng gawin mo yan. Kasi wala naman talagang gagawa dyan para sa'yo.
At walang win. There's no win in parang walling yourself off as an artist. Unless you've decided. So kunwari, in your personal calculus, I don't care if no one ever reads me. Pero paninindigan ko lang na never ako mag-market. Okay. sure, walang problema. Pero huwag kang magreklamo.
Ay, nga eh. Kasi
Huwag kang
nagreklamo sila
magreklamo.
eh.
Kung for you, your art is yours and yours alone, and if no one ever saw it, that's fine. And you don't mind it never being marketed, great. Diba? Malinaw. Basta malinaw yung calculus. Parang we always have to, kasi I teach a class in publishing sa Ateneo, and I tell them, there's a calculus between a self-published book and something na co-owned and something na work for hire and something na with a publisher. And you have to make your own personal moral calculus with all of this. Diba? Parang how much of my art must be retained for it to be me? If it's work for hire, do I expect to be allowed to put my personal ideas in there? If I put my personal ideas in work for hire, am I allowed to own those new ideas? Everything is a new negotiation.
So, yeah.
And so, kanya-kanyang develop yan. I don't want to judge people and say, ay, and sell out yan. Kasi, ang ganda ng indie comics, yes, biglang ganun. That person made a calculus that is different from yours. Diba? And then if there's a person nga na, art ito. Kung nga nakagets lang nito ako in some whatever, okay. Diba? Okay, sige. Iyo yan. Pero huwag kang kumuha ng table sa Comic-Con, bayad ka ng rental fee, walang bibili, tapos magagalit ka na gumastos ka for that. Pinili mo yun eh, di ba? Sana hindi ka na nag-table. Sana na you sold it out of your backpack or whatever, na nandiyan ka sa gilid-gilid ka. Parang,
huwag yung gagawin.
Ginagawa ko yun dati sa mga literary conference kasi wouldn't allow me to sell my books. Kasi kailangan under a publisher, kailangan ganyan. Eh, hindi yung work ko. So, okay. Syempre, pag sarili mong work, pero kasi...
Pero ngayon, di ba nag-a-allow na sila ng self-publishers?
Ngayon. Pero dati kasi, huwag na natin sabihin which bookstore, no? Pero kaya na mahulaan ng mga tao. Mag-box out yung mga bookstore. Kasi kunwari, sila yung nag-fund ng isang conference, bawal ang anything that is not available in their bookstore. Which is a fine business choice, but it totally excludes those who cannot put. And when you bring in the calculus of magkano bang hihingi ng bookstores, sometimes bookstores expect as much as 60% of cover price. So kung indie creator ka, ano na natira sa'yo kung kailangan mo mag-print cost?
Actually, hindi pa na mapag-usapan dito na if you're gonna put your books in a bookstore, or anywhere, there's a consignment fee.
Yeah.
It's not a free service.
Yeah, it's, again, kung ibabalik natin sa original figure na binigay ko at 300 to 400,000, how many products need to move? And how much of that product needs, how much earning off of each product moved needs to happen for each branch of a bookstore in a mall to hit 300,000 pesos. Kasi kung bibili ka ng ballpen na 10 pesos, sa 10 peso ballpen na yon, how much of that is actually
magkano lang sa kanila,
diba? Yung kanila, o sabihin natin 60%, pwede 6 pesos. So 6 pesos times X ballpens equals monthly overhead on rent. Rent pa lang yun. Wala pang ilaw. Tapos,
which is why nag-pivot na sila na mag-sell na lang ng ballpens at iba pang art store.
Notebooks and higher volume,
instead of books.
and think about it that way. Like, when you walk into a store, diba? Sumasweldo yung tao na bantay ng store.
Mm-hmm.
Diba? Like, that's why most, like, when we were running Uno Morato, kami din yung bantay, diba? May isa kaming staffer, dalawang staffer na tumutulong sa pag-ayos ng stuff. Pero sino yung nag-explain ng books? Kami, na bookstore owner din. Parang hindi rin magagawin ng, diba, you can't do that if you were a large chain operating many, diba?
Which is why, diba, usually may mga nagre-reklamo with that chain na you're looking for a product. Though ngayon, ang ginagawa na ata is like with yung sa toy stores, tao na nung product na yun yung nandun para makapag-explain about their products.
Pero pag ganun, that means na kunwari, book publisher ka, kailangan Lagi ka ng tao.
Maglagay ka rin ng tao doon.
Every branch,
Tapos
diba?
yun nga, hindi rin naiintindihan ng mga tao na usually yung pinagtatanungan nyo doesn't work for yung ganung book. So wala rin siya alam doon.
Actually, ang ano dyan, like, shout out na lang kasi they do it very well. Fully Booked actually does it na kabisado ng mga tao yung section kung saan sila naka-assign. Kasi nagki-quiz sila. Para sila nag-rounds, parang doktor, tuturo ng manager nila, bakit ganyan yan? Tapos, ano yung recommend mo book? But that's extra cost.
Yeah, extra
But
cost.
that's extra cost on training.
Train mo pa ulit yung mga tao. Tapos, books, hindi lang naman stagnate, pero yun lang yung books forever. Then, every month may bago yun.
Every month may bago. May refresh yan. So, it's our expectations as consumers. And our expectations of what we pay. Kasi, parang, gusto ko makamura eh. Kaya nga magbili tayo second hand, kaya kung ano na mga score natin, ganyan. But at the same time, like, if we're not actually putting capital into it, if we're not putting capital in, how can we expect people to continue to produce? Which brings us back to, kapag bumili ako ng indie comic na 100 pesos, ano ba talaga yung value niyan in terms of the amount of time that the creator put into it, o ganyan-ganyan, diba, the printing cost, yung oras na nagpa-xerox sila, how many number of copies para maayos yan, ano yung cut para doon sa booth, like everything needs to be thought about, and all of those things are extraneous to the artistic work.
Yeah. Which is,
diba?
okay na, parang ngayon I'm happy that yung ibang indie creators know the value of their work and take into account yung time and effort that they put into it, and yung booth fees and yung expenses nila for the event. Yun nga. Which is why mas mahal ngayon yung indies. Remember kasi when we started, most of the creators are just happy na mag-produce ng books nila. And they don't really, wala na sila plano na i-recoup yung cost nila.
Basta makabenta, tapos makaproduce ng next. Diba?
Oo, yun na lang eh. As in, ang pinapabayaran na lang usually sa inyo is yung production cost ng book.
Yeah.
Which is bad for the creator. Well, a bit, pero yun nga, if you are gonna continue creating, you have to have a way na sustainable siya kahit for the production lang ng book.
Yeah. So it's a number of things. No, one of them is that, and the other is, I always believe that if you pull back the curtain and you show how something gets made, it allows people to understand the value of it, and then they'll be willing to pay more.
Yes, and
which is so
why we are doing this.
Why we're doing this. Kasi if you pull back the curtain, a common question of comic book fans who are not Filipino indie comics readers. Pupulot sila ng, single. I don't know how much singles are anymore because I haven't bought one in a really long time.
There's no single. I don't know if there's singles. Well, there are, pero hindi na ganun karami. I mean, most are book.
Like sa Phil Bars or sa ganyan, di ba? Pag bumili ka, fully colored, Marvel, DC, Image, whatever, 200, at the time, 200, 250, 300, I think 400 na ngayon yung iba. But, right, like may mga tumatapat na ng $10, but, 200, 250, dati 100 lang yan, right?
Din, dati nga 40 pesos.
There you go, right? Diba? $1, di ba? Yun yung dun nakatali dati yung price eh. But, when you picked up a 250 peso comic that was fully colored by a superstar creator with superheroes that you know, and then you pick up a Filipino comic that's 150 pesos na Xerox, na minsan di mo naman yung drawing, tapos yung writing, minsan sabit-sabit yung grammar, whatever, like, di ba? And then you're trying to convince just a reader who na wala naman siyang political stance, wala siyang artistic commitment to Filipino comics, na ito ang bilhin mo, hindi ito. Diba? Because ito, this has, hundreds of thousands distribution internationally, it's this entire corporation, ito lang. Ito yung artist na kailangan natin i-encourage. So, ang binabayaran mo dyan, hindi lang yung book na binasa mo. Ang binabayaran mo dyan, yung kultura na tinatry mo suportahan. So, pag nagpunta kayong Comic-Con, nagbayad kayo ng entrance fee, di ba? Hindi lang kayo pumasok sa Comic-Con at bumili ng comics. You're contributing capital into a culture that needs support because walang enough na suporta. And so when you buy this comic that looks like Xerox or whatever, hindi naman yung tatapat sa cost ng, like if you peg it to what is minimum wage now, 12, 15,000 ganyan. Even if you thought that the creator was a minimum wage earner, hindi sila tatapat ng minimum wage on that comic book given the sales of say 100 copies. 'Di ba? Hindi talaga, hindi mangyayari. But it is our attempt not just to buy a comic book, it's our attempt to keep these creators alive, to encourage creators to keep creating. Kasi minsan, hindi ka talaga kikita ng enough. And obviously, that is a flaw in our society. Parang global challenge, yan, global problem. It's a global problem of we don't value art enough. And so when someone makes art, we don't put enough money to continue that, for that person to continue making that art. Diba, problema ito ng art in general, right? Like music, problema nila ngayon. Ay, streaming platforms kumikita. Music labels kumikita. Pero individual artists are struggling unless you're Taylor Swift or whatever. Diba na you're getting the bigger part of that negotiation pie. It's the same. It's the same with comics. Although, syempre, struggling din ng publishing in general. Pero Marvel's doing fine because of its cross-platform. DC's doing fine because it's under Warner. Diba? Pero kung isang Filipino indie creator na in a Filipino indie comics community, that needs capital infusion. And it's not getting it from other things. Diba? It can only come from people who are passionate about Filipino comics, paying to get into places, funding it. Wala kasi tayong wala namang government support, wala namang like big government institution making an investment into comics and saying kailangan mo supportahan to.
Wala pa, pero with the efforts of some, hopefully.
Yeah, but the question is, do you want that?
Yeah, hindi. Kasi once you get it, nakatali
you're
din.
Beholden. Nakatali ka na.
Isipin nyo din yan, ha? Isipin nyo din.
Nakatali kayo sa political goals, sa appointees.
As in, kahit sabihin pa nila na hindi yon, it depends on kung ano man yung administration on time na rin.
Yes. Kung sino yung admin, kung sino yung naka-appoint, kung ano yung takbo ng tao na na-appoint, and we know that can be easily politicized.
Yeah.
Right? You cannot be naive about it and say na wala, ganyan. So, wala tayong big institutions like that. And if we did, we should also walk into it with the appropriate amount of
caution,
skepticism and caution. Diba? Na hindi naman porket may magbibigay ng pera sa comics, okay na yan. Kasi ano yung hihingi nila in return for that?
Isipin nyo rin yung ano yung agenda ng magbibigay ng pera.
Bakit nila sinusuportahan ng arts, diba? Tandaan natin, things like the National Artist Award have been used to compromise artists. Diba? All of these are negotiated political spaces. Lalo na pag may ganyan, diba? Ikaw bilang indie creator, I mean, how much of your principles lie in your artistic work and how much of them kailangan, may mga bagay na, I think, diba? Like I said, we do our financial economic calculus, we do our creative calculus, and we do our political calculus of what we're willing to collaborate on. Collaboration pa lang, di ba? Parang yung term na yun, pag pumasok yung politics, problematic na yung collaborator ka ng something or other. So alam natin kung sino yung katrabaho natin, alam natin kung anong binibigay natin sa kanila bilang benefit dyan. So there's that. And then wala tayong donors. Wala tayong parang wala tayong artistic patrons.
Pero yung current na ginagawa ng ibang artists is basically the same. Yung parang crowdfunding.
Yeah.
Asking people to donate to them for monthly for them to continue. Pero sino lang ba yung mga nakakagawa ng ganun? Yeah,
exactly. Again, you have to be at the, di ba? Parang if there's a
parang may kailangan ka pa rin ma-reach na something.
If there's a long tail, di ba? You have to be at the head of the tail to be funded. Right? Parang it's the myth of crowdfunding na for example, lagi nila ipapakita na crowdfunding success is Amanda Palmer. Pero sikat naman si Amanda Palmer by the time na nag-start siya mag-crowdfunding. So, of course, her crowdfunding will be
and
successful.
remember then that most of the crowdfunded na mga success stories ngayon are mga established na creators na rin.
Yeah.
So, kailangan mo pa rin i-establish yung sarili mo to get to that point. So, mahirap eh.
It's always that. And Filipino giving is a very weird world. Yung donations and stuff. And I'm saying it because like, in other countries kasi, meron sila mga endowment funds, maraming gano'n na binibigay for creators. But we don't have that. And I always caution people, one, I don't call it an industry yet kasi feeling ko there's not enough capital to call it an industry. Diba? And so the question is, do you want it to be an industry? Do you want comics to be industrialized? And that's always going to be a question to deal with.
Tsaka ano yun eh, a question of ano ba yung definition mo ng comics. Kasi if it's industrialized, meaning it's a nakapag-sustain na work, I'm sure it will change sobra yung face kasi mawawala yung freedom. Mostly mawawala yung freedom kasi if money is involved, they would want you to do something for them for that money.
Yes,
so,
exactly.
Hindi naman kayo babayaran kasi marami naghahanap ng gusto ko makahanap ako employer tapos babayaran nila ako to do what I want. Which is saan ka mahanap ng gano'n?
Parang sino ka?
So, ba't kaya babayaran? Siyempre, babayaran ka namin to do something na gusto namin.
Oh, I mean, diba, if you go down the line of comics creators that have made it, there are still very few comics creators who are doing comics exclusively. Diba? And even say, si Budge, hindi naman siya 100% full-time comics creator. He has a job. He has a day job.
As in yun, pinaka-rare is the comics creator that's living off their own IP. As in, those are yung sobrang mga unicorns ng industry.
Yeah.
Si Manix lang ata yun.
Manix, yeah, diba? Okay naman mangarap, diba? Okay naman mangarap. Pero until you're there, diba? It's still grind, it's still work. And again, it's making the computations on tama bang gawin ko to or not.
Ano lang hindi namin kayo discourage na maging comics creator. It's just things that to think about. Kasi if you are going to start out, it's nice to know of these things. Ito, kasi sobrang lalim na usapan with yung pag minsan principles mo na yung So yun, if you are going to be a comics creator, especially if you're going to be a self-publisher, these are the things to think about. Especially, we've talked about sa ibang kwentuhan natin ng production. This time, it's more on yung if somebody is going to invest on you. And of course, yung other process ng pag-comics, yung paggagawa ng comics is yung having other people to look at it. Si Sir Carl, baka meron ka mga gustong i-promote.
Ano ba? So, one, the main thing I do now, since I left comics, is Puma Podcast. So, you can look us up on Facebook. We have something like 30 shows na. And just listen if you like news, if you like sports, if you like whatever. By this month, in a few weeks, I will have I will be launching a podcast with Chino Singson of the Itchy Worms, and Chino and I also do a regular live stream. So if you want to see that, it's called Learn Guitar with Chino. In case maging available siya ulit, my editorial hands were in a movie called Midnight in a Perfect World, directed and written by Dodo Dayaw. And so, ayun, I think nung lumabas siya last time, 99 pesos lang to watch Filipino horror. So if you're interested in that, book-wise, wala ako recently, but I guess, set aside some budget and spend it on Filipino comics.
Okay, sir. Maraming salamat. As in, this one is yung most dense na usapan with... Also, if you go to yung podcast ni sir, mas magaganda yung podcast. magaganda yung production.
Wala rin yung voice ko dun, so mas okay. Behind the scenes din lang ako.
So yun. Again, thank you for watching us. I hope you learned a lot. I mean, ako, marami ako natutunan. As in, ang hirap ka ngayon. Fact ng iba.
Thank you. Thanks, John, for inviting me. And I guess thanks everybody for listening. And if they have questions, they can go through you. Send it to me.
Ayun pag may mga questions kayo talaga. So, ending is this here. Thank you sa lahat. Subscribe kayo kung gusto nyo.
The bell icon.
And see you sa mga susunod na kwentuhan.